What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another skin-tingling episode of Lockdown 23-1. And if you are new to this channel, we talk about all things prison and crime related. So if that's something that you're into, please do not forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell before you leave, and lace the comment section up with your input. What makes these YouTube channels so great is the input from the commenters. So today we're going to be taking a little different of a pace. Usually we talk about recent crimes, somewhat recent crimes, maybe sometimes a little old, but not as old as this one. And this is also going to be the beginning of a new playlist called A True American Horror Story, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. Not only am I a horror fan, but it's October. It's almost Halloween. You're seeing horror movies all over TV. Even in Call of Duty Warzone, you're seeing it. And this is kind of what drew me into doing my research. A little bit more about this movie. I'm a huge fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, aka Leatherface. And before, this is a little piece of information, before all those names came into play, the first title name of this film was Head Cheese, based upon how he makes a certain type of pork meal. And that's very common with a lot of movies. They'll do title changes throughout, the whole duration of the film. They might change it right at the very end, or they'll leave it exactly how it was from the beginning. But this one had a lot of twists and turns. And a lot of people are huge fans of this movie. Some people actually dislike it because they bent the truth just a little bit. Alright, I'm not gonna lie, this movie is based upon a true horror story. A true crime committed by an individual named Ed Gein. Hopefully I pronounced that appropriately. I'm horrible with names. But this guy's life was a true horror story, and we're gonna break it down how it fit into Texas Chainsaw Massacre and exactly what is not really true about this movie. Now, we all know we love to see a movie that starts off with based on true events. It makes the movie just a little bit better because you know some of it really did happen. But how much of it happened? Today we're going to be talking about the facts of one of the most popular horror movies that ever hit the big screen. And tons of other movies I could see after watching the old films over and over and then watching new films come out, I could see that they were definitely inspired by this great cinematic feature. Now let's go ahead and jump into the facts and figure out what's real and what's not real about this movie. In the summer of 1973, newbie director Tobe Hooper, who passed away on August 26, 2017, at the age of 74, and a group of unknown actors ventured into the Central Texas heat to make a horror movie. Braving blistering temperatures, on-set injuries, and shoestring budget, they produced one of the most terrifying motion pictures ever made. More than 4 decades after its release, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre still shocks and thrills audiences with its realistic imagery, unhinged tone, and based on a true story marketing. And its status of one of the ultimate cult classics shows no signs of fading away. The inspiration of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is surprisingly diverse, ranging from the director and co-writer Tobe Hooper's attempt to make a modern retelling of Hansel and Gretel to real-life Wisconsin murderer and corpse defiler Ed Gein. That's how you pronounce it, not Ed Gein. I apologize. It's Ed Gein, ladies and gentlemen. Gein, if you would like to do your own research. According to Hooper, though, the light bulb moment that really ignited the film came at a department store during the Christmas of 1972. There were these big Christmas crowds. I was frustrated and I found myself near a display rack of chainsaws. I just kind of zoned in on it, Hooper told Texas Monthly. I did a rack focus at the saws and thought, I know a way I could get through these crowds really easy. After just the thought of a chainsaw ripping through the crowds to make way to his favorite gifts, he went home, sat down, and watched a show called Zeitgeist. But after watching the show, the whole damn story came to me in what seemed to be about 30 seconds. The hitchhiker, the older brother at the gas station, the girl escaping twice, the dinner sequence, people out in the country out of gas. It all came to him right there in the spot. Leatherface, the chainsaw-wielding maniac who would go down in history as one of horror cinema's greatest villains, shows obvious Ed Gein influence thanks to his mask crafted from human skin. The idea of the mask made of human skin actually came to Hooper far more directly and creepily. Before I came up with the chainsaw, Hooper said, the story had trolls under a bridge. We changed that to a character who eventually became Leatherface. The idea actually came from a doctor I knew. I remembered that he'd once told me a story about how, when he was a pre-med student, the class was studying cadavers. and he went into a morgue and skinned a cadaver and made a mask for Halloween. We decided Leatherface would have a different human skin mask to fit each of his moods. That's wild, ladies and gentlemen. It's unbelievable how some of these movies get their inspirations. You know, they just kind of eat off of a bunch of different other sick, demented stories and blend it all into one. Now, before we get into more of the facts of the movie, let's talk about the real killer, Ed Gein. Ed Gein was the inspiration for many movies, including Psycho, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs, and of course the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. What do these guys have in common? What do all these movies have in common? They like to play with dead bodies. Ed Gein, born August 27, 1906, and passed away July 26, 1984 at the age of 77. Also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, was an American convicted murderer and body snatcher. Gein's crimes committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned trophies and keepsakes from their bones and skin. Now keep in mind, this man lived on a farm. He lived on a farm, and he was looked at kind of weird at times from the town folk. But he also helped babysit a lot of individuals in this town. He was never scared to help out the community. That's another thing that was hard to believe. This dude was babysitting for people and stuff like that, but at nighttime, he was grave digging and just doing the unspeakable to these corpses. But not only did he commit a crime by digging into these graves, he also committed some murders and did some heinous things to them as well. People think 2020 is bad. Wait till you hear what this individual used to do. Gein also confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. When they found Bernice Warden, she was hung upside down in his barn and gutted like a deer, decapitated as well. And I believe the sheriff at the time, it was his mother, and when he went into the crime scene, he seen his mother like that. Can you imagine that? Whew. It's an amazing thing that this guy actually survived and lived a long life in a psych ward. Now, after Gein was quietly arrested, they started going through the real horrors of his house, and inside this house at the time was inside of a pot, a heart, a human heart that was ready to be cooked and eaten by Mr. Gein himself. Human organs were found in an ice box, and furniture was reupholstered with human flesh. My God. That shit's treacherous, my friends. And when I thought about that, I started thinking, oh man, House of a Thousand Corpses, Devil's Rejects, stuff like this. And when you watch the movies, you can see how it influenced these new horror flicks. You know, you can obviously tell that Rob Zombie was definitely a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. A lot of the characters in his movies seem a lot like these characters from these movies. Gein was initially found unfit to stand trial and confined to a mental health facility. I can only imagine the studies they committed on this individual. I believe I read one of the psych doctors kept asking him what, you know, they would ask you some of the same questions over and over again to see the replies. And he said, I can't really remember the quote. I think it's, one bird is worth 2 in a bush. And he would always reply, if you squeeze the bird too hard, it'll die. I don't know what the hell that means exactly, but hey, them psych doctors got their ways, right? And my buddy, rapper Mike, he is in the psych ward still to this day. If you want to go watch videos, past videos with him, he is a little wild, man. Mike tells me in letters that they keep asking him the same questions over and over and over and over again, expecting to get a different answer, or whatever the case is. I don't know what the reasoning is behind this. Maybe someone can lace the comment section up, psych doctor perhaps, and tell us why they ask the same questions over and over again, day in and day out, to some of these patients. Are they trying to get them to crack? I don't know. I guess it's the same way as showing them the block pictures, you know, the black blotted pictures, and they ask, what do you see? You know, I always see a damn butterfly. These guys see decapitated bodies and stuff. I don't know. By 1968, he was judged competent to stand trial. He was found guilty of the murder of Warden, but he was found legally insane and was remanded to a psychiatric institution. He died at Mendota Mental Health Institute from respiratory failure on July 26, 1984, age 77. He is buried next to his family in Plainfield Cemetery and now an unmarked grave. I wonder if they built over the grave since it's unmarked, you know? Can you imagine having a house built on top of his damn corpse? You know there's some bad mojo up in that crib. Gein's story inspired movies such as Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Silence of the Lambs. Why Psycho? Perhaps Psycho, in that movie, the killer had some kind of infatuation with his mother, his very controlling mother. And Gein kind of had the same interest. His mother and him were kind of close, or really close, I guess you could say. And when she passed away, the whole house was decaying except for her room. He kept pristine. And there was just a lot of other things that correlated into both of these stories. And also Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Silence of the Lambs. It rubs the lotion on its skin or it gets the hose again. Only horror fans will know that line. What are you, about a size 13? Oh, man. Buffalo Bill, Hannibal Lecter. I don't know if he said size 13, but it was something along those lines. He used to kidnap women, throw them in this freaking pit, make them rub lotion on his skin, and then I'm pretty sure y'all know what happened to the skin after that. Now that you know the true story that inspired these movies, let's talk about a little more of the facts of the movie. Alright? After inspiration struck Hooper and writer Kim Hinkle hammered out a script over several weeks and gave it the eerie title Head Cheese, named for the scene in which the hitchhiker detailed the process of how the particular pork product is made. Then it was changed to the menacing working title of Leatherface. It wasn't until the week before shooting was set to begin that the title was changed to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, probably because the Texas Film Commission, who helped the project gain financing, was a part of this whole situation. Isn't it funny how money directs people in certain directions? With no real dialogue for Leatherface, except for some gibberish scenes that was eventually cut by Hooper, Hansen, the actor who played Leatherface, came up with other ways to express who he thought Leatherface was. When Hooper wanted the character to squeal like a pig, Hansen went out into the country and studied friends' pigs. Then, to capture the mental instability of the character, he went to Austin Mental Hospital and studied the movements of patients there, which he then incorporated into his performance. And now if you go watch the movie and you see his movements, I mean, you're gonna look at it from a different light. He got his movements all from other psych patients. That's what I call an actor that deserves a raise. But unfortunately, all of the actors in this movie were paid very, very lightly, even though it grossed millions of dollars in the box office. They did them dirty. They did the cast very dirty. They worked in excess of 100-degree temperatures, a single bathroom shared by the whole cast, costumes that could not be changed because the actors only had one outfit, and the constant presence of bones and rotting flesh within the scene. They also said that in the scene where the dinner takes place, that they had to take so many breaks because the actors and actresses had to run to the window and throw up from the heat and the smell of the rotting flesh within the room. They used real rotten flesh. Not from humans, of course, but probably from, pork, steak, whatever the case is. But they really put the pedal to the metal when it came to this movie. They made it really authentic as best as they could. Gunnar Henson already had it rough while making the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He got so smelly by the end of production that the rest of the cast and crew avoided eating around him. To make matters a little more difficult though, he also dealt with an interesting character technique that his victims engaged in. During the shoot, Burns and the other kids who would eventually fall prey to Leatherface avoided Hansen. Hansen, let me recap, is the one who played Leatherface. They avoided him because they wanted to be terrified when they seen him in full costume. They wanted their reactions to be authentic. And they would say, if they were here on my show to talk about it, that it was absolutely terrifying of a costume. and when they first seen it, their screams were absolutely authentic. During the film, none of them would talk to me or be anywhere near me until they were dead, he later recalled. Because of its low budget, many of the stars of Chainsaw took ownership shares in the film rather than a salary. And let me just say this, some of the main actors didn't get paid for 9 months and their first check was only $28. After all those grueling hours and those hot-ass temperatures, $28 9 months later. Many of them, sometimes less. The cast took ownership shares in the film rather than a salary, but their shares were actually percentages of Vortex, the company set up by Hinkle and Hooper to produce the film. Since Vortex only owned half the film, with Parsley owning the other half, their shares were all sliced in half, which many of them apparently didn't realize at the time. To make matters more complicated, Bryanston Distributors, which acquired the film for release in late 1974, was declared revenue for the film was much, much lower than millions it raked in the drive-ins and midnight shows. The producers eventually took Bryanston to court, but by then the distributors' financial situation was so dire that they had no assets to sue for. The film went on to earn $12 million at the box office in the first year, according to Variety, but Bryanston ultimately claimed only about $1 million of that. Why the discrepancy, you might ask? Allegedly because Bryanston owners Joe and Lou were members of the Colombo crime family, Mafia. The brothers apparently got into the film business in the first place after muscling away the rights to another classic, 70 Colts film Deep Throat. You know, this happens all the time. From the Mafia muscling in and getting rights and money from other individuals out of fear, all the way down to Suge Knight and Vanilla Ice. That's right, Suge Knight. If you go listen to Vanilla Ice tell the story about Ice Ice Baby and the rights, Suge Knight pressured him. Ran up on him in a hotel room, threatened to throw him off a balcony, if I recall correctly, in order to get the ownership rights to Vanilla Ice, Ice Baby. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I do remember watching something along those lines. Suge always put the pressure on a lot of individuals to get some money off of it. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, those are the facts of the movie. It's somewhat true and it's somewhat false, but nonetheless, it is an absolutely amazing horror flick. It will torment you though. I've had nightmares after watching this damn movie before. I'll never forget them either. And another fact, one more thing. You know, this movie was set to be rated PG, and the one that I watched last night, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, is actually rated PG-13. He wanted to gain a larger viewing audience. So that means he would have to use less gore and less sexual situations. But back then, I believe in the 70s when the film was created, there was no PG-13. It was only PG. So you can only imagine how many children got to see this movie as well with their parents. You know, but if you look at the movie, there's only, I believe he said, 2 ounces of blood used. So for it to have been PG and not much blood or crazy, you know, scenes in these first movies, that just goes to show you how terrifying the character Leatherface really was. It wasn't the blood, it wasn't the gore, it was just the pure intimidation and fear of the costume of Leatherface, the movements, the actions. That's what really terrified individuals. The fact that this man is massive. He's massive, and he's wearing, of course it's fake in the movie, but supposed to be a real mask made out of human flesh. That is pretty damn terrifying. You don't need too much gore to go along with a man chasing you with a chainsaw like that, do you? If you enjoy something, ladies and gentlemen, you love it, do more research on it and see how much time, blood, sweat, and tears went into making it. It will make you love that movie or whatever that you tend to dig into a little bit more. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, I salute to every last one of you who've been supporting me since the beginning, and everybody who's just now joining the lockdown compound. Y'all be easy, be safe, and stay free.